Alright, so this is one of the shorter videos in this series on creating Previs for 3D cinematics. We're just going to be setting up our scene in Maya to start bringing in our cameras and our characters and getting everything ready for animation. So to start with, I've got this default Maya scene, and we'll just go File, New, and just make sure we're totally working in a clean scene. I want to go into Window, Settings and Preferences, and just double check that I'm actually working in meters, which I'm not, because it always defaults to centimeters. I want to work in meters because, as I mentioned before, film, architecture, games often works in meters. It's just so much easier to work to real-life scale that way. So I'll select meters, we'll go Save. Under, let's make our grid a little bit more sane, so we'll go Display, Grid Options, reset that, Apply and Close, and it's already quite cute and tidy. Some of the other things that we want to do, so we want to make sure that we're actually playing at 24 frames per second. So we want our animation settings. You can find your animation settings down here in the lower right hand corner. You see that we've got this little white box with looks like a red crosshatch on it, but you can also find your animation settings again under Settings and Preferences, and we've got down here, we see all kinds of animation settings for you. So let's just pop into Time Slider. Now under Time Slider, I want to make sure that my playback speed is real time, so 24 frames per second. I could go to Other and go 25 frames per second, as that is what my After Effects image sequence is currently exported out as. So totally feel free to be accurate. Seems like a good idea, doesn't it? Once that's been set, I'll hit save. And I definitely want to save, name my scene. So I'll go File, Save Scene As. And I'm going to go, we're going to call this Master. We'll go Master, Cinematic. If this were a series of scenes, this would be like, say, scene 1 with all of its shots. We'll just go, we have all of our cameras on the one cinematic, so we'll go Master Cinematic. Make sure we've got that one night in there so I can tell the difference between different cinematic master files on my computer. 01, and we'll just save that. Cool. Hit continue, and I'll just see if there's anything else I wanted to show you really quick, because the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start referencing our characters. Okay, I want to just get straight into that. Yes, we should also set up our render sizes and our cameras. So if I go into my render settings, it's this little clapper with these two radial dials, or you can go Window, Rendering Editors, and Render Settings. A default image format is Maya IF, which is kind of useless to us. So I often render out as PNG, Targa, TIFF. If you want to be a bit risky, you can go straight into AVI, and that just renders it straight to a movie. But it means that if just some of the frames fail, you can't exactly recomposite that back together again. So I'm going to just set that to PNG. And under Frame Animation Extension, I want the name of the frame to show up, I want the number of that frame to show up, and I want the extension at the end. Start frame and end frame. That one's pretty straightforward. If I open up my big folder frames here, I'll just scroll all the way down to the bottom, and my very final frame is frame 589. So I want to make sure Maya reflects that. That start frame is indeed 1, and the end frame is 589. I'm just going to also make sure that my very first frame is 1 and not 0. Oh, it is 0. So let's make sure our start frame is also 0. And I'll start my animation at 0 as well. If you're wondering what the heck it is I'm doing to start my animation at 0 as well, down here on the time slider, this very first field on the left is when the first frame of animation plays, and the second field is when you basically want your time slider to show which frames you're working with, so you can sort of like make sure that you're only working with a small number of frames at a time. So I'm just going to set both of those to 0 for now. Okay, so in my render settings, image format's PNG, frame and extension is set to frame and number extension. Frame padding 4, to give you an idea of frame padding is what creates all these little zeros before each number. So this one would have a frame padding of 5. You could see there's 5 integer spaces here, whereas a frame padding of 4 would just go 0, 0, 10. So frame padding of 4 is fine, since our frames only go up to 589. So I'll just leave that as default. Start frame 0, end frame is 589, and the very last things we want to do. Now, renderable camera is going to change as we start creating shot cameras, but I'll leave that as perspective for now. Image size, we definitely want to be working at HD 720. Now, if you're, this is great for YouTube kind of thing, and for Previs in particular, you really don't need a big image size. If you were actually doing animation, you'd probably be looking at 1080. But let's do HD 720, and everything else we can leave as default. We'll not worry about our rendering just yet. We're just going to get our basic settings set up because we want to see what our camera shots are going to look like. So for example, in my perspective window here, if I went View, Camera Settings, and turned on Resolution Gate, you'll see that now I've got this little gray border that says, hey, this is everything on the inside of that gray border is going to be seen in your render. Everything outside of that is going to be obfuscated or occluded in your render. If I turn on my little safe action, this just gives you an idea of make sure that this interior border, all your action happens in there. Okay, our Maya is now totally set up. We've named it. We've set up our units of measurement to meters. We've set up our grid size. We set up our animation settings to be 25 frames per second. And we set up our render settings to be PNG, name, number, extension, start and end frame are the same as the start and end frame of our animatic. And the preset set to HD 720. Okay, let us move on then to referencing in a character.